so we make progress.
Yes.
We continue. When that letter comes,
when that letter comes, we'll read it to you.
That issue. Yeah.
So it should be a bit fast instead of explaining every paragraph at reading.
Yeah. Okay, carry on, engineer.
So number 6, reasons for revocation of appointment of Dr. Nelson Gidingi as AI holder and replacement with Adan Harake. And this one I have explained, I'm going to explain by virtue of what I know as a person who has worked in the public service for that long. It's normally the heads of departments and directors who are appointed AI holders by the accounting officer. However, in consideration of exigencies of work, a subordinate but senior person can be appointed, but with very clear reporting instructions, since the head of directorate department must retain overall responsibility. This happens. It has happened. I made this very clear in my appointment letter to Harake. So if you read that letter, I was very, very clear as to the limit of responsibility of Harake in as far as reporting structures or the reporting lines were concerned. And I will explain in subsequent parts of my presentation how this reporting structure was systematically sabotaged. I think I've talked about it in my opening remarks. It must be noted that in this particular circumstance, it is the Cabinet Secretary who gave this directive during a senior staff meeting held on 18th February 2015. That's attachment N. And if you read that, I was actually not present in that meeting. I was given the signed minutes, the confirmed minutes to act on, among other things. And attachment attachment N, there are some that I've highlighted, where I've highlighted the particular paragraph.
Who is this signing as chairperson?
The chairperson, that is the signature of NYS Guru. And you can see the minutes are also initialed by the person who was taking the minutes. That is Lydia, by the secretary. That is Lydia Madhya.
Now, honorable members have found the letter, and I request that so that we can maintain a flow, I read the letter. This letter is dated 24.
I appreciate what you say, but I was just thinking that in fact the substantive issues, all these are just in the subsequent paragraphs. I really would not to diminish the significance of this letter, but I would really pray that we complete this, and since we have highlighted this, we'll come back to this section.
Okay, fine, no problem.
Now that is page 5, the second but last paragraph. Yeah, page 5 of the minutes. It was noted that the DG NYS was too overwhelmed with operational matters, and as such, many things were falling through the cracks. To address this, the Cabinet Secretary directed that the AIA be withdrawn from the Director General and issued to SDDG, who would have more time to effectively process requests promptly. This directive, the CS emphasized, would also ensure that the DG had more bandwidth to focus on strategic leadership of the institution to ensure that NYS delivers on its mandate. SDDG here was Harake. Number 7, the manner of procurement and terms of reference for the consulting house to develop and implement the 5-point plan for NYS. As far back as June 2013, the National Youth Service, together with the State Department of Planning, had commenced the development of a legal and organizational blueprint for the transformation of NYS to be a more robust vehicle for development of a wider cadre of youth in Kenya. This effort was given impetus by an executive directive in November the same year. From then on, the service briefed the Cabinet Secretary regularly through me. I learned about the involvement of the consultant, the consulting house, when the then DG Ugut briefed me about the directive of the Cabinet Secretary that a consultant take over the restructuring and rebranding of NYS. And as I have said, and I'm expounding it here, the consulting house was headhunted solely by the Cabinet Secretary. And if I go by the reports, the media reports following the appearance before Mr. Ngunyi before you here, he confirmed that it is the Cabinet Secretary who called him and told him that he had a job to do. I advised the DG that the relevant provisions of the procurement law and regulations would be adhered to and proper justification made for the choice of procurement method. I recall thereafter that I raised the matter of procurement with the CS, to which he replied that the assignment was a specialized one touching on security and therefore could be single-sourced. In any case, a decision had already been made at a higher level and the DG instructed on what to do. I then advised the DG to forward a justified requisition to my office, which I marked to the procurement unit for action. Based on the requisition and negotiated terms of engagement, the Ministerial Tender Committee made a determination and award and forwarded an award letter for my signature, followed by the consultancy contract. The terms of reference for the consultancy included development of new strategic direction for the effective utilization of NYS as a catalyst for transformative youth development in the country and implementation support services to NYS once that blueprint was developed. 8. Overpayment of Kenya shillings 12.5 million to consulting house by use of a copy of invoice. Given that the process of payments for goods and services through IMIS is an elaborate process requiring processing and or authorization by specially appointed personnel, it is impossible for this payment to have been made erroneously. That is my standpoint. It is therefore point to a possible collusion with the intention to fraud by the concerned officers. As a accounting officer, it was difficult for me to detect such an occurrence since I had no direct operational role in the processing and approval of payments in the IFMI system. Number 9. Procurement and payment of contract for supply of goods and services worth Kenya shillings 791,385 for construction of 3.5 kilometer road in Kibera. I wish to reiterate that the 3.5 kilometer road in Kibera was to be undertaken by NYS personnel and equipment in cooperation with other government agencies to demonstrate the potential for NYS to undertake such works at costs lower than the market. This was the basis for the takeover of the road from the Ministry of Land, Housing and Urban Development, who had earlier tendered for its construction. In this regard, I had personally taken the effort to have the equipment that NYS had acquired from China arrive in time to be used in the project, not only for Kibera, but for the youth empowerment project as a whole. Subsequently, when the works commenced, I made it clear to the NYS that they would execute the works using NYS personnel and equipment while getting construction materials from suitable source queries with the assistance of Kura, who are also implementing partners. As the work progressed, I made requests to DG NYS for updates on the cost of the works, and from submitted reports, we were on course to achieve the target costs. It therefore came as a surprise to me during investigations that the final cost of construction was much higher than anticipated. The matter is currently in court, and I would wish not to offer personal opinion beyond these observations. As I had said earlier, I had submitted to this Honorable committee that I'm a ward of the court and I stand guided. Number 10, value for money for the supplies for construction of the road. Given that the sourcing of material deviated from what had been the initially agreed method of delivering the road, and the fact of inflation of rates through wrong entries into the IFMIS system, as was unearthed by the investigations, there was definitely no value for money on these works. Number 11, procurement for supply of goods or services worth shillings 609, 252, 760 related to various supplies. Again, these procurements and subsequent payments did not emanate from approvals through the Ministerial Tender Committee, through which I would ordinarily be made aware of their existence. Officers within NYS, and especially the AI holders at that time, bear responsibility for using this method of procurement and subsequently approving payments. It should be noted that NYS had a fully functional IFMIS system and procurement and finance units capable of transacting on all but one of the 25 stations of the IFMIS system. That is, the transmission of payments, which was done at headquarters. From time to time, I reminded NYS management to observe the threshold of procurements that must pass through the ministerial procurement process, and one of those is in attachment P, as per the requirements of the law. I expected full adherence to the law without exception. However, from the audit revelations, it appears that NYS management did not consistently follow this requirement. Number 12, fraudulent payment of Kenya shillings 240,751, 576 purportedly to youth cohorts. One of the key pillars of the youth empowerment program was the saving of part of daily payments to the youth cohorts for their community activities in their respective circles. The NYS therefore developed a payment system in cooperation with Safaricom and paying banks. I was concerned about the robustness of the system and instructed NYS to ensure that any request for payment for cohorts was accompanied by authenticated list of particulars of beneficiary cohorts. This was prompted by the routine sample check I had made on some of the requests, which contained only numbers per working station instead of the actual names and particulars of the cohorts. I instructed DDG NYS, and you find this instruction in attachment Q, to ensure compliance, to ensure complete payrolls of the cohorts are attached in the request for payment to avoid payment to ghost cohorts. If indeed the payments were fraudulent, then the concerned person may not have adhered to this instruction. Procurement of publicity services for shillings 302, 458, 690 to Out of the Box Limited. The initiative for sensitization of the beneficiaries of the 30% spend directive by the executive was driven directly by the cabinet secretary, as I've mentioned. In fact, the requisition for procurement of consultants to undertake the work came from her office. That is referred to attachment A, which I had expounded on earlier. It was addressed to my office, but it never passed through me, instead going directly to Mr. Hassan Nur, who was the Secretary of Administration and Chairman of the Ministerial Tender Committee. It went through an open tender process and was finally awarded to Out of the Box Limited. Since the activity falls under the budget program area of women and youth empowerment, under which NIS also falls, the budgetary provision for the activities were under the NYS item for consultancy services. And I consulted with my technical staff, and they confirmed that they had, within the entire program area of youth and women empowerment, budgeted for consultancy services under an item in the NYS budget, which was part of the ministry budget. So
what had it been budgeted for?
Yes. It had been budgeted, and it was in the procurement plan.
It was in the procurement plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Number 14.
How about the competitiveness?
It was advertised. It was advertised in the print media, and the process of open tendering was followed. That I can attest to. Otherwise, I would not have signed the award letter and the contract. The only thing that did not pass through me was the requisition, because sometimes the requisition would go directly to those who should process them, and not necessarily through me. Yeah. But what was the issue here was that the requisition came directly from the Cabinet Secretary.
Who appointed the evaluation team?
The evaluation team was appointed by myself after the process of open tendering. Then from there they evaluated the two departments dealing with this matter, that is gender directorate and the youth directorate, came together and processed it. Number 14.
Okay. Chair, just wanted to ask him that do you think there was value for money, because this is they were awarded 302 million?
From where I sit, and I interrogated the what we call the deliverables and the payables, because they gave what they submitted to my office, and which I forwarded to Hassan Noor, whom I had appointed as the coordinator of that process, because it was a national process. I saw from the methodology that they had given that this was something that was going to be very impactful. However, around that time is when now issues started arising in the ministry, and they, from up to when I left, they had only given now the media plan. They had given the inspection report. They had started now going out to the counties, and on that basis they were paid now the 30% that would go straight to the media, because the media was a very big component of the first deliverable of that contract, if I can remember.
But engineer, aren't you contradicting yourself? Because you're saying it was addressed to my office, but it never passed through me, instead going directly to Mr. Hassan Noor, who was the secretary.
Here, Chair, I am talking about the requisition.
The requisition?
Yes. Not the requisition is the beginning of the procurement process. Here I'm only talking about the requisition, the origination of this work. So I think those are two different things.
Okay, proceed.
Yes. (14) Use of forged supplies branch circular for the procurement of goods, services, work plan. Following my observation in 9 and 11 above with regard to supplies by contract, I wish to state that should these payments be found to be fraudulent, individual responsibility should prevail.
What do you mean by that?
If they are fraudulent, those who used forged supplies by contract, because they were not done by ghosts, those things were done by people. They should actually explain how they did this. So that the issue also of supplies by contract was one of the issues I used to take up every now and then with my colleagues, and it used to bring what we call tough wars, because to me it was a parallel system. It's almost like I knew there was going to be a problem.
Mr. Chairman, as he effectively responds on that.
Yes.
As the overall accounting officer, how do you detach yourself from this?
Now, I explained that these particular fraudulent payments did not pass through the normal process through which I will be flagged. Also understand that as the accounting officer, I had no intervention role within the payment system at IFMIS. That is a very important and fundamental issue that I believe, as a citizen of this country, needs to be addressed. Because you cannot give somebody powers which he has no instruments to enforce. Because when you make me an accounting officer, you don't make me a supernatural human being that I can see when people are transacting business at 3 a.m. in the morning. You see, I can't see. So that responsibility should be given together with the instruments that enable an accounting officer to effectively carry out his duty of being an accounting officer.
Chair, as it says at 3 a.m. in the morning, at 3 a.m., could you substantiate?
No, I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
Yes.
But what are these instruments that you are lacking? You know you are the accounting officer.
One, and I raised this matter.
You must be alive to the Section 88 or 68 of
yes,
Public
and
Finance Act.
I raised this matter with my colleagues in our regular meetings. One, and my colleagues who have appeared before you here will tell you that it is very difficult if the PS does not have a single slot in IFMIS to track all those many payments within the system. Secondly, the Procurement Act. You see?
Now, you are sharing very important information to your friends.
Yes.
Who was the appointing authority? Who appointed you as the accounting officer?
This is not even friends. These were formal meetings with the National Treasury.
I'm in agreement.
Yes.
You are lamenting.
Yes.
But were you lamenting to the right person?
Yes. Because
who appointed you as the accounting officer?
These are matters in our meetings we put National Treasury to task.
So were you putting the CS Treasury to task?
The cabinet, the principal secretary was our colleague.
But who appoints the accounting officers?
Appointing officers are appointed by CS Treasury.
Yes. You see,
Mangiti, you are complaining to the wrong persons.
These were structural issues that I think even the country is alive to. And that is the reason why, even now, I am made to believe the second problem that was there is this one of procurement, where the role of tender committees has now been changed to actually give effect to the accounting officer being able.
But are you aware of Section 68 of the PFM Act, the role of the accounting officer?
And I think,
are you aware of that?
Honorable Madima will come to you. And I think it's important to be on record.
Right.
Yes.
This is what Section 68 of the PFM Act number 18 of 2012 says. Yeah? In the performance of functions under subsection 1, and subsection 1 says an accounting officer for a national government entity, Parliamentary Service Commission, and the judiciary shall be accountable to the National Assembly for ensuring that the resources for which his accounting officer are used in a way that is A, lawful and authorized, B, effective, efficient, economical and transparent. Then it says in subsection 2, in the performance of a function under subsection 1, an accounting officer shall, you don't have an option, shall, 1, ensure that all expenditure made by the entity complies with subsection 1, in other words, lawful and authorized, effective, efficient and economical and transparent.
Correct.
2, ensure that the entity keeps financial accounting records that comply with this act.
Yes.
And more fundamentally, C, ensure that all financial and accounting records the entity keeps in any form, including electronic form, are adequately protected and backed up. D, ensure that all contracts entered into by the entity are lawful and complied with.
Even up to there.
Yes.
Even up to there. So that is what the law gives you.
Fully aware of this. But I also want
Mr. Chairman, as he responds to what you have read, in the context of the question, as he responded can he still hold the same position that he wishes to state that should these payments be found to be fraudulent, individual responsibility should prevail in the light of this kind of guidance?
Now, what I would like to
Chair, at the same time, Chair, because PS has just said that in formalized meeting, he complained on the same. Are there those copies? Do you have the copies of those minutes where you complained that you are truthless, or rather say headless? You could not make decisions because you don't have the powers of IFMIS. Are there any copies of the minutes during those?
Listening to the PS, honorable members, listening to the PS, he was making his complaints to his colleagues, but informally, he didn't make any complaint to the appointing authority. Formally, that look, I have no instruments.
No, I would like to...
Yes, Honorable Bunyasi.
My submission on this is that I think we should not quibble around systemic failures. We can discuss this issue separately on whether or not the mandate of the law is not embedded in the technology that is being applied. And if that is the case, then I don't think we're using time effectively right now on this. I think it's an important area. I think we need to take it up so that if we feel strongly about it, as we meet the CS towards the end of these processes, we should put them to task. But I think that in terms of the utility of time, we would be best having on record the rest of this, and then you can tackle the systemic failures that there are.
You know, as much as I want to agree with Honorable Sakwa, we are talking of 222 million that was, misappropriated through the supplies branch contracts. So it's not a small change. And this is the accounting officer of the Ministry of Devolution then. Therefore,
so going on before
he should own up. In his statement, I wish to say that should these payments be found to be fraudulent, individual responsibility should prevail. Who is the individual responsibility? Himself. He's the accounting officer.
Here,
okay, sorry.
Yes.
I wanted also to say, according to us, and we normally call the accounting officers of all the departments. We don't consider any other entity. We don't call the CS. So we normally consider the accounting officer is the person in charge of the money.
We don't even normally. The act is very clear. It is
I think Engineer Mangiti will proceed, but
I'm guided.
But as you proceed, you will have to address your statement vis-a-vis the clear provisions of the law, of the act, which says shall. It doesn't even give you an option. That is what the law says.
In the sense of, and I think throughout my presentation, I have demonstrated actions that I took as the accounting officer on matters that I believe touch on the responsibilities of an accounting officer has stated. For me, the matter of systemic failures and fraud, I think, should be taken in context. And that's why I talked about this matter of, just an example of 9 a.m. in the morning. If there is fraud, and there is fraud that has been committed by individual people, I think that points to what we call systemic failures, for which, if, as the accounting officer, I did not give the necessary...
Mr. Chairman, as we seek that he continues, he is the one who provoked this argument in the manner he responded in his document. We were only drawing his attention that he cannot run away.
Yes,
that is all we are saying, that you cannot run away. All the explanations you are giving are correct, but you cannot run away. That is all we were saying, as he continues to explain.
Okay.
Yeah, please let's continue.
Okay.
We'll come back to it. As we'll come back to your letter to Alice Otwala.
Number 15, irregular payments of Kenya shillings 360, 315 to permanent staff of NYS. According to the program, and only the community youth cohorts working with the NYS servicemen and women in the respective community projects were eligible for payment of daily wages. out of which, as I've mentioned earlier, a portion was retained as savings in their respective register circles. If any payments were certainly made to permanent staff, then individual responsibility should prevail. I want to say that also, because if it is very clear that guidelines have been given, and I have demonstrated in my submission, right from correcting, or rather guiding the members of the Ministerial Tender Committee, because I was every now and then receiving documents which were not complete. And I would not just rubber stamp because the MTC is there. There are certain basic things that I was looking at before signing any contract. So I have demonstrated that as the accounting officer, I gave the necessary guidance, I gave the necessary environment for people to discharge their duties diligently, and reminding them, not just assuming that the law exists for them to follow, reminding them that this is the law that you must follow. If you bring something to me that does not comply with the law, I will not sign. If one passes through bad luck, because as one person, you can't just again become the requisitioner, you become the evaluator, you become the person who does the adjudication on all that. You have appointed people and you expect. So my job was, whenever I find these systemic problems in the system, I would raise the red flag and say, I want you to do this. I think that is where I am coming from. Number 16, reallocation of Kenya shillings 551,750 to fund NYS activities. If this indeed took place, then it was an NYS internal decision, and I hope this honorable committee perhaps got an explanation from the former DG under whose decision. It was an operational responsibility of the NYS as the implementing agency. I do not recall, on my part, any request for exchequer to fund budgeted activities that went on unattended during my tenure. So perhaps if the explanation was that there was no money, so they had to do this borrowing, then they need to explain further exactly why this happened. Number 17, operations of bank accounts by the NYS without treasury approval. I recall giving clear instructions to the DG NYS on this matter when it came to my attention that proper procedure was not being followed in the opening and operation of accounts by NYS. This is in attachment R. Once I had given the necessary guidance, as I've said, I expected the laid down procedure to be followed. Number 18, chronology of actions I took as accounting officer to mitigate loss of public funds when the matter of fraudulent transactions in IFMIS was first raised. Allow me to address this matter in detail while at the same time addressing some of the falsehoods that were presented by one of the persons who had earlier appeared before this honorable committee. One, on this issue of dissuasion of Arake on involvement of DCI. On the 25th May, a finance officer in my State Department of Planning, Mr. Nixon Obura, informed me that there could be problems with commitments of the Kenya shillings 3.5 billion that Treasury had availed for activities at NYS. With the AIE holder, Mr. Radan Harake, claiming that there were commitments in IFMIS which he had not authorized. I immediately summoned Harake to my office to explain what was happening. He reported to my office the following morning, and in the presence of Mr. Noor and the finance officer, claimed that his password had been stolen to make unauthorized commitments in IFMIS. I asked him what steps he had taken, and he indicated that he had called in the DCI. I further asked him why he had not found it necessary to inform me as the accounting officer, only informing me about these matters after I had summoned him. He had no answer to these questions. I asked him who his initial prospects could be, and he gave me the names of those who he thought could have been responsible for this so-called theft. Upon which I took the first step of stopping any further progress of these transactions by writing to the PS Treasury to debar the suspected officers from access to IFMIS. This is in attachment S. So that's the first step I took. It is laughable how Harake ridiculously presented this memo to you in a completely different context. When he was accusing officers of overstaying, and then he's saying that, you know, even the PS had written to Treasury to remove them, without and not having the conscience to at least admit what had triggered this memo, this letter to Treasury. I leave this to the Honorable Committee to judge the honesty and true intentions of such a person. At no time did I direct Harake not to involve DCI. As the accounting officer, it was well within my mandate to assess the situation and make a rational decision on whether or not to call in the DCI. I had not ceded that responsibility to Harake when I appointed him as the AI holder. The fact of the matter is that Harake kept the matter hidden from me as the accounting officer, and I only learned about it from a finance officer and not from him, whom I had appointed the AI holder. This was on the 25th. Harake was very cagey with information. He wouldn't fail to give me a formal report of the nature of these instructions when I directed him to do so. Because when he knew the very nature of these transactions, because he was the AI holder, he had access to IFMIS, he could know which of these transactions would be, and he chose not to share this with me at all. And what was curious that, you know, and he said this in the presence of Mr. Noor, that according to him, these transactions were for works that had actually been delivered. And you remember, he was the main supervisor, together with the CSS advisors. He was the main supervisor of the works in Kibera. And he said, for him, his main problem was that the cabinet secretary had directed him to commit monies on specific items of priority interest to her. And that she was furious about these items not getting adequate funding from the revised budgetary provision that had just been given by Treasury. And members, you will recall that it is the cabinet secretary who wrote that request to Treasury for additional funding. It had no tangible big input from either me or the accounting officer nor the implementing agency. Secondly, you see somebody else other than the cabinet, the accounting officer, giving instructions on how that this money should be allocated in IFMIS. The threats to Harake or the follow-up with DCI. He further alleges that I threatened him with dire consequences if he continued to follow up on the matter with DCI. But the question is, between the two of us, who was the accounting officer? Was it me or it was Harake? If I indeed had not wanted the DCI to proceed with the matter, I would have communicated to the director of the DCI without going through Harake and giving my reasons. In any case, since the NYS had formally called in the DCI and they were on the scene, my objection, if lacking merit, would be in the consequential. It would not make any difference to the progress of the investigations. Because Harake was not the driver of these investigations. So that somebody would beg him to stop the investigations or to go and tell the DCI to stop the investigations. His claim that I told him that I would cause merchants to take him to court for non-payment of their dues is, to say the least, absolutely ridiculous. Because if the merchants went to court, whom would they sue? Is it me or Harake? Who would be in trouble? I am the one who signed this contract with the merchants. So it's ridiculous for somebody to say that I told him, "Hey, usifanya hivi, I will tell merchants to sue you." In what capacity would the merchants sue him? His other claim that I would ensure that DCI fixes him on the ongoing investigations is shocking, as I do not control DCI. I don't. Neither do I assign the duties to officers of the Director of Criminal Investigations. Honorable Chair and members, you would wish to note that at the conclusion of the investigations, DCI indeed found Harake culpable in the attempted fraud. And even before you, that this is a person they found they could not exonerate. On the basis of that report by the DCI, the Ministerial Human Resources Committee interdicted Harake. It's an interdiction which stands to date. And you'll see in the minutes in attachment T. In effect, therefore, what Harake submitted before this honorable committee when he appeared before you was tantamount to accusing the DCI of complicity. Because he says, I had said we would fix him at DCI. DCI found him culpable. So is he saying that DCI was under my direction to recommend his charging? Is he casting aspersions on the capacity of DCI to carry out their work effectively? That is the question I'm asking. Generally, as an accounting officer and as his superior then, my office had more effective options of dealing with Harake, really. If I really had an interest in this matter to dying, I would have dealt with it in different ways other than just calling Harake, meeting him where to beg him to stop following with the DCI. I would not make petty threats to him. So you know, these claims really a person who is filled with the delusions of self-importance and somebody who is a chronic liar. He's a pathological liar. He also exhibited complete ignorance of public service organization and its governing laws by imagining that I would control DCI. I would also, as the accounting officer, I had no powers to deal with him if I was so much interested in what was going on in this fraud. Because even lying really requires some intelligence. It requires some basic logic of what somebody is lying about. And it's no wonder that, you know, later when I left a committee of public service, director of public service management, confirmed him as somebody who is not fit to continue serving in the public service. And now, looking at what I do, you know, in my preliminary remarks, there was a grand organizational plan to steer Harake to the ministry and specifically to NYS. So for him, given that way, he was a person who had developed an attitude of superiority towards even myself. And he was assuming he was only answerable to the cabinet secretary and nobody else, not even the DG, and even ignoring the terms of my appointment to him as the AIE holder. So the initial notification for DCI to investigate. Honorable, I will take a little more time on this because this is the reason why I'm in court and nothing else. This is the reason why I'm in court.
I need to, because it's almost 1 o'clock and we had slotted you to be here in the morning and in the afternoon, and I don't want to do the marathon that we did yesterday. Some of us are way north of the allocated time in this world. So it's too much sitting down is not healthy. I just want to get the concurrence of members.
I think you should finish the presentation, then we can...
Can we do this, engineer?
Yes.
Can you make your presentations and then we do the questions in the afternoon?
No problem.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
We give ourselves 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So and that is on the understanding, members, that there will be minimal interruptions.
Actually put it on record officially, no interruptions.
Especially from the member for Kitutu Masaba.
I am on record now.
Chair, except for the attachment he has mentioned, I thought we could see an attachment on the findings of the Committee of Directors of Public Service Management. This attachment is not. It is not. You check on that.
Well, yes, the afternoon. So carry on, engineer.
Yeah, actually 15 minutes I should be done. Right. I'll also try to not to be wordy. Okay. See, initial notification to DCI to commence investigations. The allegation by Arake that he wrote to DCI to commence investigation lacks basic supporting facts. I know only of 2 letters. One by Mr. Gishora of the ICT Department to NYS, and of NYS to DCI dated 26 May, which was curiously not even copied to me, nor even to Arake, but later forwarded to me by the then Director General, Dr. Gidinji, for my information. And the other by the then Cabinet Secretary, dated 5th June to the DCI. Interestingly, in the wordings of Waiguru's letter, she had already concluded that Harake's IFMIS password had been stolen, even before the investigations commenced. Members may recall that this is the positions he presented to the media. However, in their investigations, the DCI confirmed otherwise, and that is on record. One can only conclude that this maneuver by the CS was an attempt to shield Harake from the onset. It is on record that the then Cabinet Secretary never engaged me on the matter at all, preferring to... I can only with hindsight conclude that this was an elaborate scheme to let the matter develop under their control, and while keeping me, the accounting officer, deliberately in the dark on the goings on for purposes of finding a scapegoat when the need arose. For instance, memos attachment U1 to U3 purportedly authored on various dates starting with 3rd June 2015, which were only between the two, was in my view a scheme to produce paper trail pointing to culpability on my part. Forensic examination of the alleged memos may most probably reveal that they were written much later than the purported dates, probably after the DCI had released their first report implicating Harake, among others. Honorable members, if you may be in possession of the records from the DCI, if you read Harake's statements, because he was the only person accorded the privilege of writing 3 subsequent statements, you will realize that the memos are a summary of the statements, those subsequent statements that Harake made to the DCI.
What proof do the PS can give to show that the letters were not written when the action was being?
I have said it very clearly. I am not saying that the letters were not written before. I said if there is a forensic audit, a forensic examination of those, I said probably. I think that is important to note. I did not say that. Yeah.
Okay.
There I'm offering an opinion, and that opinion is personal.
Is profiling an opinion which is entitled to, and then we have known that letters could be backdated. Yeah. Okay, carry on, engineer.
The commitment of fraudulent payments. Once it became apparent to me that indeed these transactions could be fraudulent, I, as the accounting officer, wrote a number of letters to Treasury to have these transactions decommitted from the system. These are in attachment V1 and V2. On the strength of these letters, a team from the NYS effected the decommitments on the authority of National Treasury after the DCI had gathered necessary evidence from IFMIS. In contrast, and without any evidence, Harake claimed that he had cancelled the fraudulent transactions. He didn't. The transactions were cancelled on the authority of my letters. In fact, it is Harake who attempted to interfere with investigations when, knowing very well, and recall that he had told me on the 25th that CID had been called in. And I confirmed that they had been called in by a letter which the DG sent to me. So I knew CID were on the scene. And he also knew. Despite that, he wrote a letter to IFMIS in an attempt to have these transactions removed from the IFMIS system. That is in Appendix X. If you read that Appendix X, it is vague. It does not even give details of what transactions he wants IFMIS to decommit. And why would he want those decommitted when, or as removed from the system, when CID had just started their work? Why? So, to me, it implies this fellow may not have wanted the DCI to be officially engaged. Maybe he was talking with his friends. And we also have friends in different places that, you can talk to, and then when you get into problems, you say, oh, come and check, help me, see how I can sort out this matter. To me, that was what I can conclude that his behavior was exhibiting. So, I have given the steps I took. I also took further steps. One, I directed that all pending bills from NYS and other directorates of the State Department be subjected to re-audit, and I think I've shown you the letter. That is attachment E. By the State internal audit before being considered for payment. You can see samples of some of those correspondences that I gave in the attachment X1 and X2. This also, as I have said, drew the wrath of the Cabinet Secretary and a cohort of the people that, as I've explained, from my point of view and from what has happened to me, it is very clear to me now. That time maybe it wasn't. I stood my ground. I said the re-audit of all pending bills must be done. And I hope, because I briefed the person took over from me of this matter, I hope they took it up, and maybe they even improved the system of re-audit so that we do not have recurring cases of fraud that may just be swept under the blanket of people who have been taken to court. So, but I leave it to this honorable committee. I think you have the powers to confirm that indeed this is going on with respect to NYS payments. The other is I gave instructions that all payments whose basis was supplies branch contract should not be honored until the National Audit Office had carried out forensic audit on the same. That I did in writing to the head of accounting. That is attachment Y. I also wrote to the National Audit Office to carry out forensic audit on payments that the internal audit unit had found not to be properly supported. This was on their advice, that since the time was short, I was also under pressure that I'm punishing merchants. I was under pressure to ensure that at least those payments which were eligible could be paid quickly. Those that had problems would now go to, for further audit. And I did this under attachment Z. Also, fundamentally, and this also has to do with what about systemic failures. I observed that this inspection and acceptance certificates are linked in accountability for payments. I put together an internal team led by the procurement unit to design a standard inspection and acceptance certificate, which I proposed to the National Treasury to consider and adopt. I made this proposal recognizing that, you see, for accountability for funds, for payments, there are standard documents which are serialized. But seriously, this particular document, which is really where the rubber meets the road, Treasury has never found it. Perhaps maybe they haven't thought about it. They have not serialized it so that they are standardized across the entire government. That is the proposal I made to Treasury. I think I can ask my colleagues, I can ask if that letter I wrote can be made available to this committee so that they confirm that indeed I wrote a letter. That is part of the engagements I was making with Treasury on some of these weaknesses in the system. So, I made this proposal to Treasury to consider and adopt this as a county document, just like LPOs, LSOs, and such like, which are serialized and difficult to forge. And I also brought this matter, let me use the same word, before my colleagues, because as PSS, we used to have meetings every month. And I brought it up under the chairmanship of the head of public service, who had been a PS finance before. And I said, look, I think these issues need to be looked at. I have the benefit of having gone through problems as a result of this. So what I'm saying, I did not keep my findings myself, I shared it out. And if the minutes of those PSS meetings can be found, you will find that actually raised that matter, among these others that I had alluded to. So 19, failure by the Ministerial Tender Committee to ratify NYS procurements above the prescribed threshold. As I had said, I had written a letter to NYS on procurement matters and reminding them of the threshold issues. That I did. So, and those procurements using purported supplies contracts, supplies and contracts, which I have covered in those other paragraphs, I'm not aware of any procurement above the prescribed threshold that were not processed by the Ministerial Tender Committee. And I'll be honest to say, I would not be aware that this would be going on. Just the same way, if somebody decides to go to station number, if miss, and do business there, and then process payment, and bring it for payment, it will be very difficult for me to know. Very difficult. Though I had also my what I would say, I had given instructions that payments, when they come, a re-audit is done. And that was being done. So that was an extra check that I made. And as I said, NYS had a complete system, including an internal audit team for it, and an ISMIS. So number 20, personal interest. Allegations were peddled before this committee that I had interest in tenders at NYS and or within the ministry through proxies. At this juncture, I wish to call upon this committee to draw a parallel with this is a highlighted paragraph on page 12 of the analytical that Waiguru took to the media, where somebody, the person who was doing the analysis.
Why aren't you reading what you've written?
Okay. Chair, I was going to seek your protection, but now this is coming from you.
No, but I mean, this is your handiwork.
Yes. I'm trying to summarize.
No. Just read what you have.
Okay. Yes, that Waiguru peddled to the media.
Yes.
That is attachment F
above.
Yes. One can only conclude that this was a narrative of their skewed insinuations that they have long hoped was true, that Mangiti at least should be caught with his fingers in the cookie jar. Yeah? He has companies there. We are going to find out. We know. Further, I wish to categorically state that I am open to investigations and further investigations, because I think this matter has been investigated and continues to be investigated. We used to meet, sorry, Chair and Member, when we were executing Kibera, we used to have informal meetings in Ngong Hills Hotel, where we'd meet, with Arake and the rest of those people, and compare and debrief for the day. Somebody somewhere came up with a very serious allegation that is one of Mangiti's properties. He has bought it from the owner. That's why he keeps going there all the time. These are things that I've suffered from.
Were you meeting including Josephine Kabura? Because I think...
I have never known Josephine Kabura. I saw her in court for the first... In fact, we were there... I saw her face properly. Properly. The last by one time that we were in court together. That's when I said, oh yeah, so this is the lady. You see?
I understand sometimes, were you meeting on Sundays in the office?
Yeah, sometimes not on the office, but sometimes even because work was very intense, we could meet even on Sundays. Myself, sometimes the DG, sometimes with the CS, but not in a house.
Not in a house.
At least the core technical team that was driving the youth empowerment program.
Okay, rush to conclude.
The fact of the matter, I really wish that I am open. I say that I wish that there would be even much thorough investigations on this matter, so that somebody says, Mangiti, Bora Global is your company, Lukenya Earth Movers is your company, and we have this to prove it. I have no interest, and have never had any interest to have, wherever I work, even in the Ministry of Water, you'd never find. And if anything, really that audit would save me from the propaganda that I've been subjected to, one of which I've mentioned to you, that I own Ngong Hills Hotel. Well, even some of these beneficiary companies, I have had to all the time go and explain myself to ESC about it. Like Bora Global, Blue Star, Fahaza Limited, Blue Star, Lukenya Earth Movers, Alpha Mercantile, Brand Associates, Greenberg, Brands Park, Fresco, and the list is endless. The list is there. And if such an audit would include trails of money trails, where money went into and where it subsequently went to, it would unmask who the real schemers of the looting at NYS were. If we are serious about this matter. I really wish to request this honorable committee to compel those who have presented this allegation to submit details of the companies they claim are associated with me, either directly or by proxy. It will really help me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Engineer Mangiti. That was fairly well elaborate. Members, I hope you've taken down your questions. I have mine. And I would... it is 10 minutes past 1, and I wish to request that we break up to 1:45. 1:45, 30 minutes. You have a 30 minutes break?
Mr. Chairman, be fair to yourself. When you want to bite something, bite it and it goes down normally. For 1 hour.
Okay. Coming from the member for Kitutu Masaba, we reconvene at exactly 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Members of the media, please bear with us. We don't want to do the marathon of yesterday. I think people need to take a break. So we are coming just to get the clarifications from Engineer Mangiti. The room will be secured. Sergeant Atams, where are you? Side Wako. Please secure the room. These are very important documents. And the cameras are here. So secure the room so that nobody loses anything. So we shall adjourn. We reconvene at exactly 2 o'clock. I beg you to keep time.
Please watch up.